Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Underdog with Robert Ris, who is our woofy woof underdog today.
Woofy woof, nice intro. Yeah. It's a famous chess streamer, content creator, Alexandra Botez.
Awesome.
Um, yeah, very nice. I mean, a lot of these chess streamers they're playing tournaments and streaming their games now. And I've taken a game from the Reykjavík Open. It's a tournament I follow anyways. I've played there many times myself. So
What
I like
was
to follow and.
what was your best result? How many points?
Well, good question. I remember one time I played when I think I had 7 points out of 10.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
or maybe I had one by like 6.5 out of 9, something like that. No, it should be like 6 out of 9. Anyway,
Sweet.
I don't remember. What I remembered from the tournament is I was beating all the weaker opponents, and I lost against three very strong GMs like Navara, MVL, and Aaron Lamy.
Wow.
So
Okay.
that's something which sticks in my mind. But I had some other good results there too. But yeah, it's not fair to talk about me from very long time ago. Let's talk about the present.
Absolutely. Let's
And
go for that.
well, the first rounds they're always interesting in an open tournament, I think. And there were quite a number of upsets, but the one which caught my attention is this game Alexandra Botez played in
Perfect.
round one of the Reykjavik Open against a young IM from South Africa with a very Dutch German name, Jan Karsten.
Yeah. Sounds like it could be my neighbor. So,
Yeah, exactly. So, well, he's only, I think, 15 or 16 years old, but already an IM. So, pretty strong player. And I think the game we're going to see, it's quite exciting. A lot of interesting moments to discuss.
well done for her that she even pulled out a victory here because from what I can tell, she's still playing chess, of course, but there's so much going on in the streaming world. She's a very big streamer after all, and poker and other things are on her mind more than chess, I think. So, wow. Let's go for it. Let's see.
Yeah,
So she
let's
was
see.
white. No, she wasn't
No,
white. She was black. Can we turn the
she's playing with
board?
the black pieces. Yeah, that makes it even probably more
Hmm.
exciting. And the way it happened, it's also pretty cool. So
Can
so
can
Jan
we flip?
Karsten playing
Can
with
we
white.
can we flip the board?
Yes, let's do that.
Perfect.
Of course, let's do that. So here we are. We can see it from the black side. It's a French opening.
Hmm.
So e4, e6, d4, d5, and after knight c3, knight f6, the classical variation. After bishop g5, Alexandra played the move bishop b4, which is the so-called McCutcheon variation, very sharp opening line. And both bishops are pinning the opponent's knight. And white plays the move e5, threatening to take the knight on f6. Black goes h6. This is all pretty standard. Bishop goes back to d2. And now after taking on c3, pawn takes c3. The knight comes into e4. And this is very interesting. And one of the reasons why this game caught my attention is because of the next move which was played. As by far the main continuation here is to get the queen out to g4. It's a very aggressive move.
Yeah.
But since a few years, the move bishop c1 is actually one of the critical ways of challenging the McCutcheon opening.
With going to
And
a3, right?
yes, the bishop is usually on its way to a3. I mean, black can no longer trade off the knight
Hmm.
for the bishop anytime. But the reason why this is interesting for me personally is that I wrote an opening article in Chess Base magazine already 3.5 years ago. But the line is still very exciting, and so I know a bit about it. Unfortunately, I never got this line myself in one of my games, but I
Oh,
I studied it pretty extensively.
yes. Interesting.
Um, there are various options here, but what you have to think about as black is that the knight on e4 can just get trapped if you're not careful, because white has ideas, for instance, to put a knight on e2 to protect the pawn on c3, and then with moves like h4 to cut off the path back for the knight to g5, followed by f3, all of a sudden the knight can just be trapped. And this is something you should know as black.
Hmm.
You may take the pawn on c3, which was not played in the game, but I think in my article I cover this move queen g4. And well, black has to do something about the pawn on g7. Typical problem in the French. How are you going to solve it? You can put your king on f8, but then you have some coordination problems. While if you do play g6, then your dark squares are getting more vulnerable usually. So that's all covered in that article. In any case, Alexandra didn't capture the pawn on c3. She played the other. Oh, sorry, yeah.
No, I need to announce. I will check out which article this is. So if you at home are interested in this specific opening and the article, I will put a link in the chess-based news article about this episode below.
I think it's covered in Chess-Based Magazine 198. Just for your information.
That's perfect.
Oh, I just looked it up, of course.
Perfect. Excellent. Yeah, the link is below, so you don't have to search. Okay, let's continue.
All right, so c5 was played. This is also a typical French move to put pressure on the center, and who knows, the queen can get out to a5 at the right moment. But here, knight e2 is played. That's exactly the move I was referring to strengthen the center, support a pawn on c3. And, well, here again, various options. Knight c6 was played in the game. But now f3 is played to hit the knight. The knight has only one square to go back to g5, but now h4 is played. And the knight goes back to h7.
So can I quickly ask, because you mentioned it just now, what if the move order would have changed and instead of f3, it would have been played h4? How to get the knight out of there now, if I may ask?
That's a good question, but I guess that pawn takes d4 is a possibility.
Yeah. And because of the queen, yeah, because of the queen going to a5, right?
Queen will come to a5, and I don't think there's time to trap the knight.
Gotcha. All right. Okay, good to know. Sorry.
Yeah. No, good question. I like it. I should have checked it myself, in fact. So f3. Now the knight has to go back, as we said. h4, knight h7. And okay, you're not winning the knight, but the knight on h7, it does look some sort of stranded, but don't rule it out. It can always reappear into the game. Various possibilities here. I like a move like f4 just to strengthen the center a lot, but the other logical way of playing here is bishop a3, as the bishop is now nicely placed on this diagonal, challenging the pawn on c5. However, you have to be a little careful. I mean, for instance, if black would take, which was not played in the game, don't take back with a pawn, which is what you normally would like to do, as it runs into queen a5 check, and your bishop is hanging. But good news for white, you can take with the knight instead, and you don't really care about your fractured pawn formation, as the knight is on its way to b5 and to d6. But anyway, this bishop now on a3 is looking great. Yeah, it's
powerful,
preventing black from castling. So instead, Alexandra went for the move queen c7. Interesting idea, with the point that if you do take the pawn on c5, she had prepared this move, knight takes e5. And the queen keeps an eye on this bishop. If you do take on e5, queen takes c5 looks okay for black.
Yeah.
So instead, white went here for the move f4 to strengthen the pawn on e5 one more time. So now white is actually threatening to take on c5. Black goes for the move b6. So to support the pawn on c5. And I mean, you can take on c5 here, and black does recapture. And if you take with the bishop, the same idea with knight takes e5 is there again. So white is not interested taking now. Queen d3 was played, supporting the center even better. And now knight a5. Interesting move. Maybe not the best idea, but the knight is on its way to c4, which is a great post for the knight. Yeah, I mean, if it can just stay there, then the bishop on a3, it's really badly placed there.
How would you evaluate the position now? I think white is not so bad right now, is it?
I like white. I really value space advantage quite highly, and I mean, bishop on a3 looks a bit passive. But at some point the position can be opened, and then the bishop should be good. And For instance, also the knight on h7 is really bad. I mean, I would probably change my evaluation if, let's say, the knight on h7 would have been on e7, for instance.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Then I would probably prefer to be black. But now, okay, with both sides having one bad piece, I would say white is better.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, it's far from easy. I mean,
Of
black
course.
also has its trumps here. So I think, especially in this phase of the game, white was struggling to come up with a good plan. Queen g3 was played, attacking the pawn on g7. And okay, question here, like at an earlier stage, how to defend the pawn. I mean, Alexandra played the move g6, but there's also something to say for just castling, which is,
Oh.
well, it does look scary, but you don't have a way to open up the king side yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then, okay, your rook may join play soon, or you can try to open the c file, get a bishop to a6. If needed, you always have the break f7, f6 available. So I think it's very interesting and yeah, tricky position also for white. But in the game, they follow g6. It's trying to keep the position closed. And one of the ideas probably is that if white ever goes h5, you can respond with g5. But white decided to take here on c5. Black takes back. And now queen e3. So white is attacking the pawn, which has to be defended by knight b7. And okay, then also this knight doesn't look great. But still, also white is spending quite a bit of time getting the remaining pieces into the game. And yeah, it's not very impressive what white has been doing. c4. Trying to open the position, especially you want to get rid of this pawn on d5, so that at some point, let's say after d4, if you can get a knight to e4, that would be great news. So that you're trying to enter on one of these squares. But white played here queen f3, which I think it's not a great square for the queen once again, because the bishop comes to d7, and the bishop is on its way to c6. And white played here knight g3. So the knight is trying to get there, but bishop to c6 now. And okay, you may put your knight on e4, but it's not looking too great, yeah, on a diagonal where it's just pinned by the bishop. So queen d3 played. I mean, so many queen moves by white. And now I really like the move played by Alexandra, as she has to decide at some point where to place the king, but she just went for castling queenside.
I
think
think
it's
I
a very
like
nice
that too, yeah.
It's quite remarkable because you have quite advanced your pawns on that side, but still you have quite a number of defenders. And I think her idea is just to try to break open the king side or the center with the moves like g5 or f6. And then if the center falls apart, you see that black has a lead in development.
And I wonder how good it is for white to castle alongside, because castling kingside is that looks too dangerous. And also, so white has a little bit of a problem to deal with their own king's safety now that black has castled and a couple of pieces in the game now, it seems.
True. I would say that even if you castle queenside here, which is something I didn't really check carefully, but I have the feeling that for black it's easier to build up something on that side, maybe queen a5, move the king, get a rook over to the b file. Seems like black's king is relatively safe and it's easy to mobilize your own forces.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I like that castling move by
black.
Yeah,
as you mentioned, yeah, this king is in trouble. You may play a move like king f2, maybe to get a bishop to f3, but then black is very fast with something like g5.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, there's a little bit the role in this game might be who is quicker with initiative, maybe, and black now.
Exactly, and I think Alexandra has been playing pretty well. After the opening didn't go that great, she's now taking over the initiative. I mean, it's actually still very interesting and complicated because bishop e2 is played with the idea to challenge the bishop on this diagonal. Black captured the pawn.
Yeah.
Hits the rook, but white played here king f2. So white is just ready to sacrifice the exchange, which was not accepted by black. There is this possibility to take on h1, and after rook takes h1, you have this interesting clash. Yeah, I mean, there are not too many open files, and white's plan is very simple to get a bishop to f3, a rook to b1, maybe a queen to e4 or to b3,
Hmm.
with tremendous pressure on that side of the board. However, as so often with our human thought process, the engine is not very impressed by it, and there's one very good move for black. It's queen b6, which makes it really hard for white to get a rook over, and then white will not be able to build up that sort of pressure.
Huh.
So
Well,
it
well,
was
well.
actually possible to take on h1 the rook. But okay, you from a practical perspective, I like what black did. You just drop back with the bishop. You have taken a pawn, and you keep a very good bishop on the board. Now bishop f3 played, and I think the idea is just to swap bishops and then get the knight into e4. And then the plan is very simple: to double rooks on the b file, put pressure against the knight on b7, against the pawn on c5, and potentially it's really bad for black because you're playing without that knight on h8.
Yeah.
But now very nice move by black, f5, because it just covers the e4 square, so the knight can't go there. Capturing en passant is also not too great because it hangs the pawn on f4. And
Oh.
then, well, you have tremendous play against the white king. You can capture on f6, get a rook to the f file. Well, the position plays itself here for black.
Hmm.
So that means capturing en passant not possible. Rook ab1 is played, but also the knight on g3. It's stranded here. So okay, various possibilities. I mean, white still is aiming for some play on the b file. So one plan for black could be to get the knight back into the game via f8 to d7 and then to b6. It's something I quite like, but it's also quite slow, and I can understand that in a over the board game you feel like you need to act faster as black, and therefore g5 was
Ooh,
played.
yeah, I eyed that one too. I looked at it and calculated it in my head before you made the move.
Yeah,
Because yeah, it looks
it,
interesting.
it looks faster way to get a knight involved again, and you're trying to open up the king side. But after taking on g5, I think that white also gets some quite nice play now. Bishop takes f3 was played. Not sure that was really needed. I doubt it. In fact, it as in a way it feels like you're helping white to gain more control over the light squares. And after taking on g5, of course, white is not going to take. Then there's knight takes g5, and there are so many ideas. You're attacking the queen. Maybe knight h3 could be an idea sometimes. This is absolutely great for black. But the key move here is rook h6. This is a move which may have been overlooked by black in advance.
I didn't see that either. My goodness.
Yeah, and look what's following here, Arne. As after pawn takes f4, there is knight takes f5.
Okay, wait a second. What is happening here?
If you take the knight,
Okay, thank you. Yeah, rook
it's rook c6. Yeah,
c6 is
exactly,
really cute.
exactly. So here you see that white's pieces, they start
Poof.
working nicely together again. And that means that all of a sudden, out of the blue, this knight just rejoins play again. And uh,
Oh, this is
I think from a
dangerous.
positional point of view, this is not what you really want. It's still very tricky though, because here, instead of capturing the knight, knight g5
Yeah.
is played. Everything is hanging here.
Yeah.
The queen, the rook, the knight. But look what white does here. It's really fun game. A lot of interesting positional and tactical motives. White just captures here on b7 with the queen, with the idea that after queen takes, of course you're not going to take the queen. Then you're just material down. That's not going to work. But instead you give a check on d6, and you're about to win back the queen on the next move, as
Rook
just
takes,
eliminating the
takes,
knight
takes.
runs into intermediate check, capturing the rook. And whatever you do, everything is here hanging again. Like you can take the
Oh
queen
gosh.
and after that the rook as well.
How complicated. My goodness.
Yeah, this is very very difficult to calculate from afar. And well, instead of capturing the rook, king c7 played.
Oof.
Rook takes b7,
Oh,
king c6, rook takes rook, rook takes rook. Let's see what's happening here. I mean, white is all of a sudden a piece up.
yeah.
Bishop on a3 doesn't look too great here, though. But the game is not over yet because there's a pawn, a knight, and a rook, which are all trying to generate some play against the white king. And
Yeah.
white's pieces are not too well coordinated.
That's true, but the engine would probably say something like bigger plus for white, no? Or what
Not
do you?
not too big, not
Not
too
too
big.
big, really.
No, it's
Wow.
no, because for instance, if black were to move here,
Yeah.
I think the threat is to go knight e4.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
To deflect the knight, and then the rook could be hanging. Other ideas just to give a check on h2. So it's not easy to parry. Let's see.
Hmm.
Rook a7, capturing the pawn. Rook h2. The king is forced to go backwards. King f1. And now black has even a choice. You can try to eliminate as many pawns as possible, which is good if you want to fight for a draw. But you can also consider playing for win with f3. So the pawn is more advanced now. And well, for instance, if you rook a6 check was played, king goes back to d7. But you also have to be careful here a bit, which is probably something the white player didn't really realize. Rook a7, king c6, moves were repeated once. And okay, rook a6 is just leading to a draw probably. But here, white played knight b5. Probably with the idea to give a check on c7. And if
Oops.
the king goes away, you can capture
Yeah.
on c5.
That's
But
mate, even.
yeah, that's getting some sort of mate indeed. But here, both players made some mistakes, which can be forgiven, of course. It's very, very complicated. Knight e4 is by far the most human move, which was played in the game.
Another
But
checkmate
apparently,
threat.
it's better to play here king b6 first. And the reason is that after knight e4, okay, white played rook c7, which is not good, but there is still rook a6 for white, giving a check. If you go back with the king to b7, you still have the possibility to get rid of this knight by playing the move knight d6. And in that way, you're solving the threat. Yeah, this is very tricky. I mean, Wu's playing for a win here.
Yeah, for real.
After taking the rook, knight takes e4. Probably this is okay for both sides. It looks like it's going to be a draw at some point. But at least you should get rid of this knight on e4 because rook h1 is such a huge threat.
Wow.
So rook a6. Let me show you one more line. Instead, if you go king d7, rook a7, probably you got to go back with your king to c6 because if you go to the back rank, let's say you go king e8, there's this knight d6 idea again. So you cannot get out of this sort of perpetual. And that means king c6, rook a6 is a draw. But in the game, white instead went for king c7. Sorry, rook c7, king b6. And thanks to this knight on e4, the pawn is also defended.
So
Yeah, so
close.
otherwise, bishop takes c5, king goes to the side. It's white who's giving checkmate. But the problem is, okay, how to defend against his mating threat. If you try to run away with a king g1, it's rook g2. And king h1, it's knight checkmate in the corner. So bishop takes c5 was played here, giving up the bishop.
Okay.
Now it's knight takes c5 anyway. And okay, black's king is safe. Rook f7. And white is hoping to wrap up this pawn on f3. But with knight e4, all the tactics are
Oh
working in black's
no.
favor. But it's remarkable, yeah. Remember that knight, it started on e4 in the middle, in the
Yeah.
opening. And then it went back all the way to h7, but
Yeah.
now it's all over the board, setting up so many
Now
nice tactics.
it's kind of the strongest piece on the whole board almost.
Exactly, and I mean you cannot eliminate this pawn because of knight e2, of course. And after king g1 attacking the rook, you just capture the rook on f3 with check and defending the rook at the same time. So
Easy.
that's also not working. Yeah, no, it's really a remarkable game. I mean, it's still not over. King g1, rook g2. So here again, if king h1, it's knight f2 with
Nice.
checkmate. And after king f1, rook takes c2 was played with
Makes sense.
another mating threat, this time from the other side. Yeah,
And
yeah,
the
it's
threat of
terrible.
not taking the pawn is still up, of course. Nothing changed.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, it was played in the game. Rook takes f3.
Oh.
Sort of only move, but now it's just
Yeah.
92, and king defends the rook. You pick up the material, and his rook takes c4, and well, after knight d6, rook a4, you're going after the other pawn. King e4, king c5 was played. White played here a3, and there are many ways to convert. You're just an exchange up. Of course, as being the side, the stronger side, you always got to think about not trading off too many pawns, like a pure rook versus knight endgame is a draw. But I think Alexandra converted it very nicely with the move d3. Giving up that pawn was not even needed, but it clarifies the situation, as you do capture the pawn on a3 with
Okay.
check. King goes back to e4, and the nice move here is rook a4 check. So the king is forced to go back again, after which king d5 is there,
And
and
that's our pawn.
that's the pawn. I mean, you still have knight f7, but after rook a7, you
Yeah.
can no longer keep this pawn defended. So that means after rook a4, white resigned.
Wow. Okay, fair enough from white, because white in a position like this, you can still fight to the very end and just get checkmate, kind of, right? So I think that was
True.
a fair move after all.
Yeah, I know, but
Wow.
I like this really sharp battle,
This was amazing. Yeah.
and I think also the way Alexandra played. I mean, probably it's just part of her opening repertoire, but she played the way she likes to play. She played a sharp game,
Mhm.
and converted very nicely her chances.
That was actually really, really cool. I enjoyed this big time. Congrats to both players. Thank you, Robert, for analyzing this. It was a lot of fun. Excuse, please, my cat sounds in the background. They are going to be fed right now.
Yeah,
After the Underdog episode, they're always a bit uneasy.
yeah.
But
Blame it on me, Arne.
no,
Thank you.
yeah, no, it's the Underdog. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's the Underdog. Yeah.
Thanks, Robert. Thank everybody for watching. We see each other soon enough. Bye
All
bye.
right. Bye bye.